Serious, what is the creepiest, strangest, scariest experience you ever had in your life? I lived way out in the country in the woods several years ago. It was a nice summer night, so I had all the windows open. I was a single female, and men's cologne came wafting through the windows so strong I could taste it. Scared the shit out of me. I couldn't lock the windows and the doors fast enough. A woman I once knew was a biologist in Louisiana. She told me that as a 20-something she was out doing field work miles and miles from any road. She had to hike to get to this place and stay awake overnight to study some newts or something. At 2 in the morning she smells cigar smoke wafting on the breeze. She said she turned off her torches and crawled away. I was hiking near Cundionm along the Santa Cruz River when I caught a whiff of cigarette smoke and the body odor of someone sweating out alcohol. It was almost dark and my friend and I managed to hide behind a pinyon tree as 2 guys walked by on the trail. As soon as they cross the river we run as fast as we can back to my car, which has had the window shattered and been looted. As we are peeling off we see them running our direction. We didn't stop until we were back in Santa Fe. If it hadn't been for the smell we probably would have been murdered. As a kid I was always told to avoid the hills around Traches, but to be honest the entirety of the high road gives me the creeps. Nothing super exciting besides almost getting hit by lightning. It was insanely loud. I got an instant sunburn and my body felt static like for a few hours. I was just about to step out of the garage and it struck in the yard between the garage and house. Worked emptying an old house. The house was infested with cockroaches. The whole house felt depressing. Where we emptied the basement it always felt like someone was right behind us. There was a cut rope hanging from the ceiling. The woman that lived there had hung herself. We didn't find out till the last week of work. We never went down to the basement alone after that. I was in middle school when this occurred, so I was around 13 years old. My best friend and I were next door neighbors, so we often walked to and from the bus stop for school. We were walking home one day from the bus stop when an old red pickup truck slowly drove by us. We didn't recognize this red pickup as anyone that lived in the neighborhood. It was a small neighborhood. The truck was going the same way we were walking, and we could see the driver lean forward, and it looked like he was looking at us. He then sped off down at the end of the block and turned around the corner. My best friend and I looked at each other and said that was weird. We shrugged it off since there were some houses for sale on the block and we did happen to walk by one. We were halfway down the block when the same red truck turned from the corner and was heading towards. He was speeding down the road, but as he approached us he slowed down. The man's driver's side window was now rolled down. I don't remember much of what he looked like, but I do remember him having face tattoos. Now we were worried as we passed him, and he slowly passed us. I happened to look behind me to make sure he was still driving. Nope. His brake lights light up, and his truck jerked when he placed it into park. I saw the driver door open, and I yelled to my best friend run. We proceed to sprint to my best friend's house since her mom was home and no adult was home at mine. We practically throw open the front door of my best friend's house and slammed the door closed and locked every lock on the door. My best friend's mom was mad at us for slamming the door until we told her what happened. As we were telling her this, the same red pickup truck slowly drove down the street as we watched from the front window. We could see him looking around as he drove slowly. I'm pretty sure to this day he was looking for my best friend and I. This scared her mom enough to call the local police department's non-emergency number. This guy circled the block of my neighborhood twice while she was on the phone with the police department. Police started to patrol the neighborhood, but we didn't see the red pickup truck after the police showed up. I have no idea what happened after that, but we never saw the red pickup truck. We weren't walking to the bus stop for a week after that. My best friend's mom drove us to and from school for that week. God, this is terrible, but I had a really messed up childhood. My parents were not together, and I was being traded off every weekend. It was my dad's weekend and I went over to his house. He was acting super weird the whole day, but I didn't notice it much as a little kid until I looked back on it. I remember him taking me and my little sister to run errands with him. He ran into different places and me and my sister played in the back seat. He stopped at a friend's house and came back flustered and angry and sped out of the driveway. The next couple hours were normal and we were fine, but our dad was super anxious. I remember it being dark outside when he told me and my little sister to get in the car. We drive to a rundown motel on a bad side of town and get out of the car. I asked him what we were doing there and he told me we were hanging out with some of his friends. I didn't think anything of it and we went into the motel room. It was a small room with one bed and a jacuzzi tube beside the tube. Our dad started drinking with the group of guys in the hotel and he told us we could go swimming in the hot tube. We didn't have bathing suits, so he had us in there with just underwear and that shirt. After a couple minutes he left without saying anything to us. I asked the guys where my dad went and he told us he would be back in a couple hours. Something in my 7-year-old brain didn't feel right about the situation. One of the guys started talking to my sister and I and acting really friendly. He told us he wanted to get in the hot tube with us and started to undress completely, exposing himself to us. He tried to get really close to us and I held my 3-year-old sister close. This man was completely naked in a hot tube with 2 little girls and our dad wasn't there to stop it. I was really scared and acted like I was taking my sister to the bathroom and went out the front door of the motel, still wet and in our underwear. I held my sister while she cried and we walked down the hallway away from the room. Luckily there was a lady in the hall and she asked if I was lost. I asked her if I could call my mom on her phone to come and get us. Thankfully my mom came right away and after that my dad lost visitation rights. I'm so glad that they forced us to memorize our parents' phone number at school as well. I'm grateful that woman was in the hallway before one of those guys found us. Coming back from a New York Giants football game as a 12-year-old, we were driving past a bunch of old abandoned factories when I saw a teenager in rags and what looked like chains around his body limping away from one of the factories like he just escaped from a horror movie torture chamber. By the time I told my friend's dad we were already past where I saw the kid. Very strange. I know what I saw that day and it was something serious. My freshman year in high school I was taking choir class. We were staying after school practicing for our concert later that month and one day my teacher ended up calling practice about an hour early. We all started calling our parents to let them know we were finishing practice early that day. One of the girls in my class had left her phone at home that day. She asked if she could use anyone's phone to call her mom. Of course I offered mine. She called her mom. From behind me where she was sitting I hear her crying. She asked me what my number was. I was confused, but I recite my number back to her. She still has my phone to her ear. Tells me your number is my aunt's old number. She passed a year ago. When she called her mom with my cell phone her mom received an incoming call her from her sister that had passed. It was the craziest strangest thing. Not scary or bad, but still something I think about. Was checking the cows one morning and was watching the calves play and counting them all when I heard a odd sound in the woods. It sounded like a woman crying and I walked around. That's when it started screaming at that point. So I said duck this, walked back to the UTV and went home. In all reality I knew it was a mountain lion. I didn't want no part of that crap. Lots of cultures have stories about weeping or wailing women that waylay travelers and kill them. I can't help but think that those stories might be from people sitting around a campfire at night and then hearing a mountain lion and thinking it's a woman in distress. Some brave and well-meaning soul goes out to help and then is never seen alive again. If you have never seen picture of what the victim of a mountain lion attack looks like, do yourself a favor and keep it that way. They kill for food and they can eat a lot in one sitting. They do not leave much behind. When I was 18, I was stalked by a man named Pete at my grocery store job. He was a man in his 50s 60s. I used to work at the counter, selling cigarettes, lotto, doing small checkouts, etc. This man came in. I kid you not. Every single shift that I worked, he'd always come to the counter to check out with me. If for any reason I was helping at the registers, he would come to mine. He would gaze at me in a really creepy way. If I was standing across the store from him, I could feel him staring at me. He began to buy me chocolate every time he came to my register. In the beginning, I'd accept, mainly because I just didn't know what to say or how to politely deny. It got to the point where I'd have bags of Reese's behind the counter. On one occasion, he baked me an entire cake and brought it to the grocery store to give to me in front of everyone. I did not eat it. He also used to come in with this guy, whose name I don't remember, but his friend lived 2 houses down from my house at the time. I was living at home with my parents at that time. His friend had a very specific work truck that I recognized wherever it was. His friend would sometimes stare at me if we were both standing outside our houses. I went into the store one day on my day off to get some snacks, and Pete was there with the same friend that he always came in with. I was at lane 1, and he was at some other lane in the back. He stared at me with this borderline evil look on his face, like an utter seriousness. I gave me chills. It got to the point where other employees could sense his weird fixation on me and would go to the extent of sending me to the back office whenever he came in. I'd been telling my parents about Pete, and finally, my dad decided to get involved. We lived literally a block away from the store, so my dad told me that as soon as I saw Pete walk in the store, to text him, and he would drive down right away. He'd have ample time since Pete would have to shop first. My dad knew what he looked like from the description I gave him, since Pete always came in his same work shirt, had a grey ponytail, and the same blue bandana around his head. My dad stood right behind Pete in line and witnessed the absolute creep Pete was towards me. On this day of all days, he finally went to the extent of asking me out on a date. I declined. Pete pushed back, but I continued to decline. My dad walked right out the store behind him. I literally never saw Pete again after that day, and my dad didn't really tell me what he said to him other than that he really shook him up. Anyway, fast forward. One night I'm working at around 9:30 at night. The store closed at 10 PM. Pete's friend that lives 2 houses down from me at the time walks in. He was a quiet guy and didn't really talk much. He walks around the counter heading to the back of the store to shop presumably. I happened to notice through the window that he parked his work truck right next to my car. Remember, I'm very familiar with what his truck looks like. I thought this was strange considering I'd parked in the back of the parking lot earlier that day because there was never parking in the front during the daytime hours. So I definitely thought it was odd that he chose to park all the way back there during this time when it was dead, when there was a bunch of open spots right in the front. Even then, he parks right next to the only car in the back row. He would have known what my car looked like. It was a specific bright blue color and obviously recognizable from my driveway he saw every day. I ended up telling my supervisor about it right then and there. She agreed she felt that it was weird and that she would have me escorted to my car at the end of my shift. I guess we were being a bit loud because not even 5 seconds later, the guy comes around the counter and walks right out of the store. Never bought anything, and he'd been in there for about 15 minutes. I instantly had this sick feeling that maybe he was plotting on kidnapping me. From that point on, I never saw either of them, and I eventually just stopped working there and got a better job. Made me insanely conscious of my surroundings from that point on. Look dog, I come from a third world country where gunpoint robbery is standard, but moving to the US made me realize that crime here is much more macabre. I've heard your story too many times, and I'm really hoping to keep hearing them with the same positive outcome. But anyway, here is what I learned. If you see a car parked uncomfortably close to yours, regardless of which side, then proceed with caution. Side door vans are especially dangerous, since they allow for quick snatch and grab. If they are combat parked on top of this, then you best be ready for the worst. In my birth country, fools would hop out their cars and jump into yours as soon as you sat down in your car, or yoink you and take you for a ride in the back of their dark ass van. Luckily, overwhelming violence always catches them off guard. Please stay safe, and remember that being proactive always beats being reactive. There is a small cave system near my house, and my brother and a friend decided to go explore it one day when I was about 8. The cave starts of being quite spacious and is even equipped with light, as it is located in a bit of woods near the town, so lots of people go in it. But we decided to move further than this known part, the ceiling getting closer and closer with each turn. After 20 minutes or so we come to a point where we have to continue on our knees until eventually we can't progress unless we crawl on our stomachs. No natural light is to be seen anywhere, but we still decide to do it. We crawl for quite some time before I start panicking. There is no way to turn around in this position. There is no way anyone would hear us screaming for help if we get stuck or hit a dead end. No one even knows where we went. Cell phones weren't a thing yet. Luckily, eventually the ceiling got higher. Light became visible and we found an exit. But damn, IWQS never so scared for my life ever again. Thanks for watching. Consider subscribing for more videos.